The crunch of gravel under heavy boots was the sound that shattered my morning. I was in the barn, tightening a hinge on the old wooden door, when the blare of sirens cut through the crisp ranch air. By the time I stepped outside, a convoy of police cruisers was parked along the dirt road, red and blue lights flickering against the wide Texas sky. And at the center of it all, waddling with the self-importance of a dictator inspecting her troops, was Karen, the HOA president who had been trying to sink her claws into my land since the day I moved back. Her face gleamed with smug triumph as she pointed toward my house and barked at the deputies like she was their commander. "There's the property," she announced, her shrill voice carrying across the pasture. "Unsafe structures, unlicensed animals, environmental hazards, you name it. It's time this eyesore is seized for the good of the community." Seized. That word struck like a hammer. I wasn't some renter overstaying my welcome. This was my family's ranch, land bought with blood, sweat, and sacrifice, and passed down to me after my tours as a Green Beret overseas. Every fence post I'd repaired, every acre I'd restored, every dawn I'd bled into this soil, all lived in my bones. And now Karen, who never worked harder than filling out a citation form, had summoned armed officers to strip it away. The deputies fanned out, uncertain, their hands hovering near their belts. I could see the hesitation in their eyes. They weren't sure what they were walking into. That hesitation was my opening. I strode forward, boots pounding the dirt, and stopped at the gate. My voice cut like a blade. "This is my ranch. You're trespassing. And if you think I'll let you take it, you've underestimated the wrong man." Karen sneered, crossing her arms, her bulk shifting with the weight of arrogance. "The HOA has full authority to enforce community standards. You're storing military vehicles, endangering children, running livestock without permits. This place is a disgrace, and I won't allow it any longer." Military vehicles. My lips curled into something between a laugh and a snarl. The so-called military vehicles she meant were two retired Humvees I legally purchased, restored, and registered, parked neatly inside my barn. I'd kept them pristine, engines purring like lions, because they were more than machines. They were reminders of the men I served with, some of whom never came home. I raised my hand, not in anger, but in control. "Deputies, I need you to look at something." I walked into the house, heart hammering, and came back with a binder thick with documents. Deeds signed by the county, permits approved by the state, and a federal designation that classified my land as part of a veterans' agricultural rehabilitation program. I laid them on the hood of the nearest cruiser. "This ranch is protected. It's exempt from HOA jurisdiction under state law. Every structure is certified, every animal accounted for, and every vehicle registered. What you're looking at is not an eyesore. It's a federally recognized program for veterans, signed off by the Department of Agriculture itself." The deputies leaned in, scanning the seals and signatures. Their shoulders loosened. One even nodded, glancing at Karen with something that looked like annoyance. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "this looks legitimate. We can't act on HOA orders when the property is under federal exemption." Karen's face turned crimson. She lunged forward, jabbing her finger at the binder, then at me. "Don't you see? He's manipulating the system. He's dangerous. He has weapons. He's running a compound." Her words hit the air like sparks, but before they could ignite, another voice cut through. From the back of the crowd came Sergeant Miller, my old teammate from Afghanistan, now working with the county sheriff's office. He stepped out in uniform, arms folded, his presence radiating authority. "Karen," he said flatly, "you've crossed the line. Again. I've seen the paperwork. This ranch is lawful. And if you think you can weaponize the sheriff's office to settle your petty vendettas, you've just put yourself under investigation." Gasps rippled through the neighbors who had gathered along the fence line, watching the spectacle unfold like a scene from a movie. Karen's jaw dropped. For once, she couldn't summon a comeback. Her power shriveled under the weight of Miller's words, and the smug queen of citations looked like nothing more than a cornered animal. I stepped closer, lowering my voice but making sure everyone could hear. "You wanted to raid my ranch? You wanted to take what isn't yours? Here's the truth. I fought for this country, for your right to live free, even when you abuse it. And I'll fight just as hard to protect this land from people like you." The silence that followed was louder than any siren. The deputies turned back toward their cruisers, clearly done with being pawns in Karen's game. Miller gave me a nod, a silent salute between brothers. And Karen? She stood trembling, her empire of fear collapsing as fast as the crowd's whispers turned into pointed glares. But that was only the beginning of her downfall. The raid that was supposed to end my independence ended up sparking a fire Karen couldn't control. By sundown, the video of her shrieking at deputies had already gone viral across the neighborhood group chats. You could hear her voice cracking as she called my Humvees illegal tanks and claimed I was hiding weapons in my barn. Folks who had once been intimidated by her saw the truth with their own eyes. Karen was nothing more than a bully with a binder, willing to waste county resources to inflate her ego. But the real blow came 2 weeks later at the emergency county hearing. Karen had filed a formal complaint, doubling down and insisting my ranch was a threat to public safety. I walked into the courthouse wearing my old service jacket, not as intimidation, but as a reminder that I'd already defended rights far more important than HOA bylaws. The room was packed with neighbors, some angry, some curious, but most fed up with Karen's antics. She sat at the front, flanked by 2 board members, her chin high, her binder stacked with flimsy papers. The hearing began with her rambling, painting me as a militant squatter, accusing me of storing combat-ready vehicles and breeding livestock without health checks. She threw around words like compound, militia, insurgent, anything she thought would make me sound dangerous. But the more she spoke, the more ridiculous she sounded. Murmurs of disbelief spread through the room. When my turn came, I didn't raise my voice. I simply placed my documents on the table: federal exemption, state permits, agricultural certifications. Then I added something Karen hadn't expected: a letter from the Veterans Affairs Office, confirming that my ranch wasn't just legal, it was part of a therapy program for returning service members. Every barn renovation, every fence mended, every crop planted was part of a rehabilitation initiative I'd been leading quietly for other vets struggling to find peace after combat. The twist that broke the room open was when Sergeant Miller stood up from the back row. He walked forward in full uniform, looked the county clerk in the eye, and testified that he'd personally worked with me to bring other veterans out to the ranch for therapy. He told the story of a young Marine who had stood at my pasture fence at midnight, ready to give up on life, until the quiet of the ranch gave him a reason to hold on. Miller's voice cracked as he said, "This land isn't a hazard. It's healing. And if you take it away, you're not just taking property, you're taking away lives saved." The hall erupted. Neighbors who had been silent stood to their feet, applauding. Some had tears in their eyes. Others turned on Karen with looks that could have burned holes straight through her binder. She tried to protest, shrieking that this was all fabricated, that I had planted witnesses, that the entire courtroom was conspiring against her. But by then, no one was listening. The judge leaned forward, gavel in hand, his face hard. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, his voice like steel, "your complaint is not only without merit, it is malicious. You have attempted to weaponize both county law enforcement and this court for personal vendetta. You've wasted resources, endangered community trust, and smeared the reputation of a decorated veteran. This court will not stand for it." Karen's face drained of color. Her lips quivered, but no words came. The gavel struck. The complaint was dismissed with prejudice, meaning she couldn't file it again. On top of that, the judge ordered a review of her leadership in the HOA, citing abuse of authority. Her empire crumbled overnight. The HOA board, desperate to salvage their credibility, voted to remove her. Then the county announced a separate investigation into misuse of HOA funds, sparked by her stunt. Neighbors who once cowered under her reign now stepped forward with stories: bogus fines, threats, intimidation. The pile of evidence grew until it crushed her completely. The final image of Karen I'll never forget was seeing her escorted out of the HOA office by deputies, not as the queen of rules, but as a fraud stripped of her crown. She shouted about conspiracies, about how the neighborhood would collapse without her, but nobody listened. The same people she'd tormented for years stood in the parking lot clapping as she was driven away. After her fall, the neighborhood shifted. Instead of fear, there was freedom. People rebuilt fences without worrying about citations. Families gathered at the ranch for barbecues, children laughing in the fields where Karen once claimed danger lurked. Veterans came too, finding solace in the land's wide silence. My Harley's rumble, My Humvee's engines, they became sounds of pride, not rebellion. And that wooden board still hangs on my gate. My ranch hands, OFF. It's weathered now, the paint fading under sun and rain, but it stands as a reminder that truth can outlast intimidation. That courage, even quiet courage, can turn the tide against someone who thinks power is theirs to abuse. So I'll ask you as I write to stand tall, to fight back with truth instead of fists, to expose Karen until her empire collapsed? Or should I have taken a softer road, one less filled with confrontation? Tell me your thoughts, because in battles like these, right and wrong aren't just written in core theory, written in the choices we all make when someone tries to take what's not theirs.